everyone. Welcome back to my kitchen for a new edition of Dessert.Devotion. It's Memorial Day weekend, and I hope there are lots of plans to share time with relatives and friends and to eat some good food and make some great desserts. Our featured recipe today is a white chocolate cheesecake that is too easy to make. First thing we're going to do is work with our white chocolate. My favorite is Ghirardelli. We're going to use half the bag, that's about 5 ounces, and heat it up in the microwave. I like to heat it up in 30-second increments until it has kind of a smooth texture, and then we'll just put this aside and get ready to make the cheesecake. I have 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese. The best thing to do is to let them sit on the counter and come to room temperature. Y'all, I have tried to melt cream cheese in the microwave for a recipe, and then sometimes there's little lumps in it. The best thing is to let it just sit on the counter and come to room temperature. Then I'm going to add in just 1/4 cup of sugar. You don't need a whole lot of sugar in this particular recipe because remember, we're also going to add in that white chocolate. The white chocolate, y'all, is the star ingredient of this cheesecake. It really brings this rich texture to the cheesecake that is absolutely delicious. After blending that a bit, I'm just going to add in my eggs one at a time. That's what I love about this recipe. It's pretty no fuss. So anytime you want a nice homemade recipe, boy, this cheesecake is definitely a go-to. After this, we'll just add in our flavoring and we'll be done. To keep it easy, we're going to use a pre-made graham cracker 9-inch crust. I'm going to bake my cheesecake on 325 for about 40 minutes. Here's 2 tips to a great cheesecake. You don't want to over bake it. So the first thing I do is take that top rack and I put it down as low as I can so that the cheesecake is in the oven a little bit below the center line in the oven so that it doesn't brown too quickly. The second thing is if you kind of shake the cheesecake and there's no jiggle in it towards the end, it's time to pull it out. Well, while the cheesecake is in the oven, let's gather around this table for a time of devotion. As we're at this table, I invite us to think about Jesus's well-known words that he shared for the last time around the table with the disciples before his death on the cross and his ultimate resurrection. We can look to 1 Corinthians for those words in the 11th chapter, verses 23 through 26. They may sound familiar to you. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took a loaf of bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup also after the supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." Now, of course, these words sound pretty familiar to many of us, right? Because we often say these words as we celebrate the sacrament of communion. And during the sacrament of communion, Jesus commands us to remember him, to remember his sacrifice. And as we celebrate communion together as a church all over the world and with the saints that have gone before us, we are experiencing the blessings of that sacrifice anew. Jesus says, "Do this in remembrance of me, in remembrance of what he has done for us through his death and resurrection." And even some verses or some versions of the Bible say, "Do this in memorial of me." Now, we think about communion when we think about remembering Jesus, but really we could have meals just like the disciples and still take the time to remember Jesus, to remember what he has done. So on this Memorial Day weekend, when people are traveling and we're going to see friends and family, many of which we have not seen in a long time, I mean too long, It's a chance to catch up. It's a chance to reconnect. It's a chance to refresh and recharge and to spend that time together after many of us have been apart for so long. But it's also a time to remember. It's a time to remember the blessings of Jesus Christ and what Jesus has done for us. Even though it's not an official sacrament of communion, it can still be a practice as we gather together and break bread and share a meal of remembrance. We remember that all the blessings that we have come at some kind of sacrifice. On this Memorial Day weekend, we remember the men and women of our armed forces who have given the price of their life that we might have the blessing of the American freedoms that we hold so dear. Likewise, with Jesus, we remember the ultimate sacrifice that he offered through his life, offering us a greater sense of freedom from sin and death, and the hope that Jesus will return again to establish his kingdom here on earth. So this weekend is a chance to enjoy our family, enjoy our friends, eat great food, eat great desserts, and enjoy ourselves, enjoy that downtime, enjoy that time to experience the outdoors and the great weather that we'll hopefully have. But it's also an opportunity to remember and be grateful. Our cheesecake looks beautiful coming out of the oven, and when it cools, don't forget to add your fruit garnish. It will make it really appealing and a showstopper for your company this weekend. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Dessert Devotion. Hey, if you make this recipe, be sure to share it with me in the comments. Join me next time for another easy recipe and inspiring devotion. See you soon.